Okay, so today we're going to start our Chapter 10 notes, but with our Chapter 10, we're going to have a couple of sections from Chapter 9 still. So today we're going to find yet another way to solve quadratic equations. So if we remember from last class, the standard form of a quadratic equation is going to be that ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So we've got our ax squared, which is that a is just the coefficient to our x squared term, our bx, where our b is just our coefficient to our x term, and our c, which is just our constant. So when we're graphing quadratic equations, they can be solved by a variety of different methods, including graphing and by finding square roots. Okay, so one way that we have is that we're going to graph our related quadratic function. So our solutions are going to be where they intercept the x-axis. So they're going to be our x-intercepts. Okay, so we have the option, if we look, a quadratic equation can have two solutions. It can have just one solution, or it can have no solutions at all. So when you get to Algebra 2, you'll see that there are solutions that are not real, but right now we're only learning about our real solutions. So right here we can see that this parabola hits the x-axis at -2 and +2. Okay, so those are going to be our solutions to our quadratic equation. Okay, so on our next page we have our roots of our equation, which is just our solutions to our equation. So it's just our solution to our equation. Okay, so today I'm going to teach you how to graph on your calculator, so that we can just keep using our calculators instead of having to graph everything by hand. So I pull my calculator up. Okay, this first one we have is that it's going to have y equals x squared minus 6x plus 3. So what I want to do is I want to go into our y equals, and I'm going to type in that x squared minus 6x plus 3. Okay, so once I do that, I want to graph it. So as we can see, it hits our graph at two different places, right? So that means that we're going to have two solutions to this equation. So to be able to find our solutions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit second trace. So it gives us our options of value, 0, minimum, maximum, intersect. Okay, and I want to find our 0, so I'm going to hit 2. So it's going to give me, it wants us to know our left bound and our right bound of just this specific intersection. So this is on the right, or on the left side. So that's perfect, and I'm going to move this down to the bottom and hit enter again, and I just want it to guess it. So right now our 0 is hitting at this 0.55. Okay, and to find our other 0, we're going to go back to second trace and hit 2 for our 0, and we're going to find it for our other intersection over here. Okay, so I'm on the left side of that intersection, and I want to go up to the right side, hit enter. Okay, we're going to hit enter again, and it tells us that our other 0 is going to be at x equals 5.45. So those would be our solutions, and as we can see just from this graph that we definitely have two solutions because it hits at 2 different points on the x-axis, okay? So for today, what I want to do, I don't necessarily think you have to graph that. If you want to graph it, go for it. But I don't necessarily think you need to for this specific problem. But for our next problem, we will be graphing it. So right now, we have x squared minus 1 equals 0. So if I pull up my graph, I'm going to go back to that y equals, and we're going to clear it out. And I want to say x squared minus 1. Okay? So once I do that, I'm going to hit my graph to see what it looks like. So we know that it's going to hit 2 different points, right? So we can go back and look at our zeros. So if we go second trace, go down to 2, and we move our little cursor, so we want to hit the left bound. So this is on the left side of our first one, and on the right side, hit enter. So right now it's telling us that x is -1, okay? So we're going to go over here, and we are going to plot that x equals -1, okay? If you noticed, from here, once we get down here to our vertex is going to be 0, -1, so we can graph that. And to find our other 0, we are going to go back and do this again. So this is on the left-hand side, this is on the right-hand side, and oops, hit the wrong button there. So we want to go back to our left-hand side, right-hand side, enter, and it tells us that we have a 0 at x equals 1, okay? So we can also graph that. To find 2 other points on this parabola, so we know that we're graphing it right, what we're going to do is we are going to hit second table. So if we notice here, it's going to give us, we know that our vertex is down here at 0, -1. We've already graphed our -1, 0, and our 1, 0. Our next 2 points we have are -2, 3, and +2, 3. Okay, so if we go over to -2, we're going to go up to 3 and graph it. And if we go to +2, we're also going to go up to 3 and graph it. So our parabola should look something like this. Okay, and our solutions, oops, our x equals -1 and +1. Okay, so for our next one, we're going to go back and graph it again. So if we hit clear, just hit x squared and graph it. For this one, I'm just going to look at our table. So I'm going to hit second graph. And our table tells us that our vertex is at 0, 0. So I can go ahead and graph that. And our next 2 are going to be at -1, 1 and +1, 1. And our next 2 out are going to be -2, 4 and +2, 4. So -2, 4, +2, 4. And we're going to graph it. Obviously, it's going to hit on all of those, okay? So this particular one, this particular parabola, only has one solution because it only hits the x-axis at that x equals 0. So our solution is going to be x equals 0, okay? And if we go down to this last one, we have x squared plus 1. If we graph it, we notice that it doesn't even hit that. Doesn't hit the y-axis at all. So our parabola should be graphed just 1 up from the last one that we did because it says +1. Okay. And since it didn't hit that x-axis at all, there are no solutions. Okay. So I want you to go ahead to the got it problem and graph those solutions. For this first one, we should have our vertex should be down at 0, 6, negative 16. And our solutions are x equals negative 4 and positive 4. Okay. This one over here, we're going to have our vertex be at positive 0, positive 6. And our parabola should look something like this. So there are no solutions here because it does not cross this x-axis. And down here, first thing we need to do is add this 25 to both sides, which just gives us x squared equals 0. So we've seen this one before. And we're going to graph it. So that gives us one solution, x equals 0. Okay. So the other way we can solve these is by taking the square root of each side. So if we have x squared equals 81, to get this x by itself, we're just going to take the square root of both of those. So when we take the square root of 81, that's going to give us a plus or minus 9, because if we multiply 9 times 9, that gives us 81. If we multiply negative 9 times negative 9, that also gives us 81. So whenever we take the square root of anything, we are going to get a positive and a negative. Okay, so this is going to be our answer, and that gives us two solutions. Okay. So for this next one, we need to get our x squared by itself first. So we have 3x squared minus 75 equals 0. So we're going to add that 75 to both sides. That leaves us with 3x squared equals 75. And we have to divide by 3 on both sides, which leaves us x squared equals 25. And take the square root of that. That gives us x equals plus or minus 5. So that should be our answer. You can go ahead and work on your got it problems. Okay, so we should have plus 36 plus 36. So m squared equals 36. And we take the square root, which gives us m equals positive or negative 6, plus or minus 6. Okay, over here we have a minus 15, which leaves us 3x squared equals negative 15, divided by 3, x squared equals negative 5. If we take the square root of a negative, that does not work, so we have no solution here. Okay, and on this one we have 4d squared plus 16 equals 16. So if we subtract that 16 from both sides, that gives us 4d squared equals 0. 0 divided by anything is just 0 again, so we have d squared equals 0. And since 0 is neither positive nor negative, that just leaves us with d equals 0. So that's just one solution. Okay. And that's it for today.